Okay, everyone, listen up. So, about 2 weeks ago, I became one of the luckiest Muppet fans in the entire world because being in LA, we happen to, be close to movies sometimes, and I was very lucky to have a very, very, very fortunate friend who got me a pass to see an advanced screening of the next Muppet movie. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you. I mean, we're 6 months away from the movie being released, and like 3 days before I went and saw the movie, that's when I found out I could go see it, and I was like, whoa, what? I went and saw it, I know what happens, and it was so funny, first of all. It was so epic. There were so many great gags, so many great use of characters, so many great songs. I mean, the movie wasn't even like officially finished. Like, it was edited together, but there was still a lot of special effects that weren't finished. But I didn't even care because I got to actually watch everybody, and I got to watch this movie, and I got to see what happens, and I got to just see, I got to be a part of putting it all together. Because that's kind of the point of these screenings in the first place. You get to watch the movie, and then they ask you questions about what you thought in the end. So I got to be a part of making this movie even better than it already is, hopefully. I have made a solemn oath to not reveal any details. I have made a solemn oath to myself, to the world. I'm not going to reveal anything that I saw because I do not want to ruin anything for you guys. But I will say that it is so much fun, and I really don't think you guys are going to be disappointed. It was just such a great film. Anyway, let's get down to the reason why we're here in the first place, shall we? Oh, and I've got my red Fraggle shirt on, so let's go ahead and review the next Muppet film. So, right after the Muppet movie was released in 1979, it became a huge hit. The film was critically acclaimed, it became one of the highest grossing movies of the year, and it got 2 Academy Award nominations for Best Score and for Best Original Song for Rainbow Connection. Rightfully so. And with The Muppet Show still going strong, the Muppets had become more popular than ever, having won several awards including 4 Primetime Emmys. Since there was so much success in the air, it only seemed right for the Jim Henson team to go ahead and make another feature film that starred Kermit and the rest of the Muppets. And they wasted no time because the next movie was released just 4 days after the 2-year anniversary of the last film. They got a team of 4 of their best writers, pitched a lot of ideas, Jim Henson was set to direct this time around, and they soon got started on producing what would in time become one of the most popular Muppet productions to date. Well, after viewing this movie, I think I have a pretty good idea of what Jim Henson was thinking when they produced this film. How can we make the movie even bigger? If you think the original movie was epic, hilarious, and not tremendously subtle, try a movie that is 3 times all of that and more. I mean it. Everything about this movie is bigger. The story is bigger. The humor is bigger. The budget is bigger. The production value is bigger. The action is bigger. The songs are bigger. Everything about this movie is just bigger. Whenever I ask anyone what their favorite Muppet film is, they almost always say The Muppet Movie. But after that, the next response is usually the 1981 classic, The Great Muppet Caper. If the first film is the most popular among fans, then this is definitely the second most popular. So with that in mind, how exactly did this movie create such a great following over the last 30 years? Well, let's take a look at The Great Muppet Caper and find out. So from the very opening shot of the film, we're quickly introduced to some classic Muppet satire, as Animal cleverly spoofs the MGM lion for us. And right as the opening credits roll, our main characters appear in a hot air balloon.
I'd like to try this without the balloon.
Try what? Plummeting?
Yeah.
I suppose you could try it once.
Now let me start by saying it's really hard to talk about the premise of this movie without also talking about the humor. Remember how in the last film they addressed the 4th wall and they broke it in a relatively healthy manner? Well, in this film, they don't really break the 4th wall.
Gee, a lot of people worked on this movie.
This is nothing. Wait till you see the end credits.
They just go ahead and demolish it instead. Once again, the characters start the movie by indirectly telling the audience that what we're about to watch is a movie, and everything you're going to see is not to be taken seriously.
How long are these opening credits?
Just about another minute or so.
You can tell right away that everything is going to be taken to the extreme compared to the last film. And they don't just talk about it. Oh, no. In traditional Muppet fashion, they also sing about it.
There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Hey, a movie! Yeah, we're gonna be a movie!
Starring everybody and me.
And you know what? I don't even need to explain the exposition anymore. Kermit does it for me.
See, in this film, me and Fozzie play crack investigative reporters for the Daily Chronicle. And Gonzo, he's our photographer, and it's gonna be terrific. Boy, I wish I were you people seeing this for the first time.
Oh, believe me, it was really funny when we did!
There'll be crooks and cops, there'll be villainy, but with us on call, we'll fix it all real easily. Hey, a movie!
Yeah. Remember when I said the production value was bigger in this movie? Well, just look at all that crazy stuff going on in the background. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? But it sure is hilarious!
Everybody, yes!
So after the high production musical number is over, the story begins with Kermit, Fozzie, and Gonzo trying to convince their boss at the Daily Chronicle to let them go to London to interview Lady Holiday, a famous fashion designer who recently had her jewels stolen. And I don't mean recently like in the last week, it happened in the opening number. And then from here, we get one of the strangest, most confusing, and yet still one of the most ingenious jokes to ever come out of the Muppet franchise.
We thought identical twins working on a newspaper would make an interesting story.
Yeah.
That's right! Kermit and Fozzie play identical twin brothers in this movie.
Especially since you two guys don't look anything alike.
Well, that's because Fozzie's not wearing his hat. Fozzie, put your hat back on.
Oh, yes, sir. See?
Oh, yeah.
They never even explain how this is supposed to work, but really, who at the end of the day could pull off a joke like this besides the Muppets?
Yeah, but how are we going to get to London?
I'll tell you what, Fonzie. Since you're such an investigative reporter, you figure it out.
I'm Fozzie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the hat.
I'm so confused, but it's just so funny! So our heroes apparently have no money and are forced to travel via cargo, but they eventually make it to London and find a place to stay at the Happiness Hotel, which, as you may notice, is not a place that lives up to its title very well.
If that's the Happiness Hotel, I'd hate to see what the sad one looks like.
But we find out it's not completely deceiving. I mean, the tenants seem pretty happy.
The lobby's looking shabby and it's got the wrong address.
An old ag thing has been condemned by American Express.
Still, the management is cheerful, though the whole joint's gone to hell.
Welcome home to Happiness Hotel.
So we're introduced to many of the familiar Muppets, and you've probably caught on that rather than this being a direct sequel to the last film, this is instead its own standalone story. Unlike the Muppet movie, which was about how the characters got their start together before the Muppet Show, this movie blatantly gives us a whole new context on how they came to know each other. Continuity? What's that? But like I said, they do make a clear point in the movie that this is just a fun, inventive story, so it's not like we're supposed to expect this to play a part in any kind of Muppet chronology. In fact, it's more like a drawn-out Muppet Show sketch if you think about it. If for even a minute you try to take this movie seriously, you'll be asking way more questions. But since they continually encourage us that it is a movie, you just forget all about that stuff and just go along with all the quips and humor of the film. Back to the story, the three reporters go to seek out Lady Holiday, played by Diana Rigg, and while looking to interview her for their investigation, Kermit comes across another familiar face.
Moi as Model of the Year. I never dreamed when I first began in this business that I would reach such lofty heights.
Yep, it wouldn't be a Muppet movie without her now, would it? So in this version, Miss Piggy plays an aspiring fashion model who is hired by Lady Holiday as her new receptionist. Upon meeting Kermit, she falls literally head over heels in love with him at first sparkle to the eye. What a shock.
Are you okay?
I don't think I'll ever be the same.
So, because of a misunderstanding, Kermit mistakes her for the real Lady Holiday, and Miss Piggy naively goes along with it, even going as far as sneaking into a ritzy London townhouse to impress her amphibian crush, much to the surprise of the real British tenants.
you said the pets were dead.
From there, the main characters attend a fancy club for dinner and were introduced to the quote-unquote villain of the movie.
I feel as if thieves were breathing down my neck.
Thieves aren't breathing down your neck.
I want to put them in a safe.
No.
Yes.
Yes, I meant yes. Why would I say no when I meant yes?
Not subtle at all, are you? Actually, this is Lady Holiday's brother, Nicky Holiday, played by Charles Grodin. If you grew up in the 90s, then you'd probably remember him as the dad from the first two Beethoven movies. But he won't be dealing with dogs in this movie, as it turns out he has a fascination for pigs instead, finding himself instantly attracted to the porcine diva, and decides he must have her at all costs.
She's sensational.
45 words a minute. About average.
Even though later in the movie he does end up successfully framing her for the jewel robbery, wherein the Muppets have to prove her innocence, which ultimately leads to more heist and hilarity. But I'm getting ahead of myself. And of course, Kermit does find out that Miss Piggy is not really Lady Holiday, and he's not happy about it.
If it isn't a fake Lady Holiday.
Hello?
Hello? Last night you never even said goodbye.
Kermit, that was just silliness.
So this scene has especially been made memorable because of how the characters spontaneously break character.
Piggy. Piggy, you're overacting.
What?
You're overacting. You're hamming it up.
But to be honest, I personally remember this scene as a reminder that although the tension between Kermit and Miss Piggy has always been hilarious, they can still at times be, putting it politely, pretty nasty to each other.
Look, I have a career of my own.
I know all about your career, Pig.
I don't need this lousy duck farm here.
Sure you don't need a lousy
You
duck
just
farm.
walk.
Okay,
You
sure,
can
go
walk.
ahead,
Sure,
walk.
walk.
Okay, walk, sure, walk. Oh, go ahead and walk.
Yeesh, talk about animal abuse.
Piggy, I'm sorry. We gotta get back to the movie, though.
All right. Kermit, I'm sorry I left you last night at the nightclub.
Well, that's okay, Piggy.
Oh, Kermit.
Oh, Piggy.
Oh good, they're sorry. I guess that makes everything okay now. Now, all jokes aside, the scene that follows is actually really cute, and it's important to talk about because of the advanced puppetry techniques that were used to achieve it.
Pretty day, sunny sky, lovely pictures dance in your eye.
It all seems so right.
It all feels so rare.
Making a puppet ride a bike was not entirely new at the time, especially since Kermit did it in the last film, but if you watch, you'll notice the technique definitely becomes more complicated. Whoa! How did they do that? Ah! How was Kermit doing that without falling? Actually, I recently did some research, and I discovered that most of these full body shots were achieved because the puppets were controlled by strings on moving cranes. But really, can you even tell? I don't think there's a single shot in this movie where you can see a visible string. And they don't just have two Muppets, they have all the Muppets riding bikes at the end of the scene. Whoa, mind totally blown here. Another important scene involving puppet technique is the fantasy sequence, where Miss Piggy briefly daydreams about being praised and adored while also taking part in a water ballet. This was pretty much the first time that any of the Muppets had been seen swimming underwater, and apparently it took a week of preparation and filming to make it all happen. And Frank Oz, Miss Piggy's performer, actually scuba dived and puppeteered her himself. And according to him, it was all worth it because the sequence was a lot of fun to shoot, and the final result really is a wonderfully comical achievement.
All the world ever wanted was you, a dream come true. Ah, Miss Piggy.
The fact that the puppeteers went out of their way to make these scenes happen and they put the puppets in these musical numbers, it just makes you appreciate the movie even more for its groundbreaking achievements. And speaking of music, it's really important to note that the songs and score of this movie were all written by none other than Joe Raposo. Oh yeah, that guy from... Wait, who? Oh, wait a minute! This is the guy that composed a lot of great songs and music for Sesame Street, as well as other Muppet projects. You may remember songs like...
How to get to Sesame Street.
And...
It's not easy being green.
As well as...
C is for cookie, that's good enough for me.
And who could forget...
Sing a song.
Sing a song.
Make it simple. To last your whole life long.
All of them written by him. Pretty much any Muppet song that you remember growing up with as a toddler, more than likely he wrote it. But don't let the fact that he wrote a lot of children's songs fool you, because he also wrote music for projects in film, TV, theater, as well as writing original songs for Frank Sinatra and a lot of other singers. And when he was brought on board to compose the soundtrack for this movie, he didn't hold back in showing us how diversely wonderful his composition is. Along with that, big production numbers complete with background dancers, intense musical build-up, and overwhelming special effects, this movie really has gone above and beyond compared to the music of the last film.
What a great number!
Seriously! And if you can believe it, this song in particular ended up giving Raposo an Academy Award nomination. Talk about an extraordinary range in a music career. By the way, before we go any further, tell me real quick if this scene happens to look familiar to you in any way.
And though you feel much more than you dare to show,
Heaven, I'm in heaven.
Oh yeah, you'll notice this movie plays a lot of tribute to a lot of movie classics, such as Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers films, 1960s caper movies, and the fantasy scene is very much like an over-the-top spoof of the water ballet movies of Esther Williams. In my opinion, I think what really makes so many of these original Muppet films so great is how well they play clever homage to so many great films that have come before them. In keeping with Muppet tradition, the Muppets pretty much do what they've always done best, and that's put on a grand show that makes a comical and elaborate satire to familiar media. And if you grew up with this movie, it really is a great introduction to the genres we would later come to recognize. Also in keeping up with Muppet tradition, the movie offers a healthy dose of celebrity cameos. But unlike the Muppet movie where the cameos were mostly drive-by appearances, here they actually play definite parts in the story. Jack Warden is the newspaper boss, Robert Morley directs our heroes to the Happiness Hotel, John Cleese is a resident of the house Miss Piggy invades, and, well, Peter Falk is more of a gag, but a longer, funnier gag.
I hate to be rude, but we're trying to do a movie here.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and there's also Peter Ustinov as the truck driver that Miss Piggy hijacks, along with...
Hey, what's all the racket?
What are you doing here?
A very brief cameo.
Me too.
Another interesting note is that quite a few puppeteers made cameos in this movie as well. In fact, there's more puppeteer-related cameos if you think about it. First, Richard Hunt and Catherine Mullen, then Frank Oz at the Daily Chronicle, Jerry Nelson and his daughter Christine in the park.
Look, Dad, there's a bear.
No, Christine, that's a frog. Bears wear hats.
And even Jim Henson himself makes an appearance as a club patron. So that's a total of 6 Muppeteer-related cameos in this film. Actually 7 if you count Muppet builder Amy Van Gilder sitting next to Jim in this shot. Oh, and apparently Brian Henson, Jim's son, is amongst these bicycle riders, but I'm too lazy to even try to pick him out. There really are just so many wonderful things about this movie. It's so hard to pick a favorite at the end of the day. Probably one of my favorite things about this movie is that there really are a lot of unexpected comical surprises. For me, every time I watch this movie, there's always a new joke that I missed from before. There's visual jokes, literal jokes, subtle jokes, in-your-face jokes, old jokes, new jokes. Almost everywhere this movie turns, there is a joke of some kind, and they are all hilarious. Also, unlike the last film, which was constantly collecting its cast throughout the story, this one specifically makes an effort to focus on the 4 main characters from the beginning. They don't even spend too much time introducing them to us. They just kind of give us the story and off we go. But even if you're really not familiar with the Muppets, just the way they present their personalities and tell us that we're gonna have a good time, the movie comes out even more comical and engaging in that way. Like most movies, however, it does not come without flaws, and this movie does have quite a few of those. Now, most of them are forgivable, especially since we're aware that we're watching a satire Muppet film, but I will point out the one problem that bothers me the most, and sadly, it is a big problem. The most disappointing thing that I personally find in this movie is that the story does tend to be really predictable at times. To clarify, the humor is unpredictable. The story, not so much. And as a lot of critics have pointed out, it does tend to be really safe and not nearly as edgy as the last film, which unfortunately lends the movie to be a little anticlimactic. And no, of course I won't ruin the ending, but trust me, it will not be that hard to figure out once you actually watch it. But then again, maybe that comes out as one of the movie's biggest strengths in the end. Even though you have a strong sense of what's coming, the movie knows exactly what it is and it doesn't take itself too seriously. And although it doesn't have any serious, heartfelt, or really suspenseful moments, I don't think it was ever meant to have any of that. It was strictly meant to be a really silly, comical film, like a drawn-out Muppet Show episode, while also having a grounded, adventurous story that's also a tip of the hat to the old-school caper films. An odd and unique combination, but they somehow made it work. Even though it's not my personal favorite, I can see why it's another big hit with fans and audiences alike. It has a really fun story, the writing is clever, the music is catchy, the visuals are really impressive, the characters are especially entertaining, and let's face it, it has some of the best comedy you'll ever see, and this movie delivers it with no apologies. Looking back, everything about this movie is very over-the-top and campy, but in a good old-fashioned Muppet kind of way. And the final result really is one of the most tongue-in-cheek films the Muppets have ever been involved in. And trust me, that is saying a lot, so it's really hard not to enjoy this movie while watching it. For a final recap, let's talk about the home video release. As I'm putting out this review, the most recent version of the film is the 2005 Kermit's 50th Anniversary Edition DVD. And to be honest, there's really nothing that spectacular about it except for the movie itself. There aren't really any special features on this copy, but there is one extra called Pepe's Profiles, where Pepe the Prawn interviews one of the Muppets. They have a different profile for all 4 of the anniversary releases, but unfortunately, it's a little underwhelming and nothing to rush out to the stores for. It's also a little weird because Pepe didn't show up until about 15 years after this film's release, but I'm probably overanalyzing. However, we recently got some promising news because Disney has announced that The Great Muppet Caper will be released on Blu-ray this December. Well, finally! So, I can't give a review of the quality or features yet, but apparently it's being released as a combo pack with Muppet Treasure Island. So when we get to that film, I can probably give you my better opinion of it. Until then, you'll just have to enjoy the standard DVD and keep yourself company with the burning question of why Disney keeps insisting on re-releasing their films with amateur quality Photoshop covers. Really, Disney?
What am I, glutton for punishment?
Well guys, thank you so much for watching the review, and be sure to check out The Great Muppet Caper if you want to laugh and have the time of your life. I'm Rachel of How Adorkable TV, and I'll see you next month for the next review.